Welcome everybody. Welcome to the Planet Somatic, and this particular session is called The Invisible Lifebird, the philosophy of body-oriented coaching. So I hope you've come ready to kind of geek out and to have some exploration in experience, because who came to the keynote? I personally wasn't there live. It was recorded because it was 2:30 a.m. UK time. But where was anybody at the keynote who's here now? No. If you watch the recording of the keynote, you'll see that I had many slides and lots of facts and resources, lots of things that you can go and look at later. So I recommend checking out the keynote recording when you receive that. You'll notice for this session, I've gone full analog. So this is handwritten. Yeah, nice, Catherine. Great. This is handwritten structure for today's session. The reason being, because I would love for this to be as interactive as possible, as conversational as possible. So like we said before, it wasn't just we weren't just saying it when we say we'd love to invite you to come off mute. We would definitely love to invite you to do that. So what is today's session all about? It's we're gonna attempt to start to shine a light on what is perhaps at the heart of body-oriented coaching, the kind of heart and soul of this approach. Some of the really key tenets or principles, the core tenets and principles that speak to both, well, how is this different from other approaches, which some of you may have a question about, and secondly, why does it work? How do we, what is it that has this be effective? If you do get a chance to watch the keynote, you'll get a lot of science around body-oriented coaching and the science behind that. So if you want the more science, today we're going to be taking coming at it from a slightly different angle, which is into areas that are indeed studied scientifically, but primarily has to do with what in the world of somatics is sometimes referred to as primary subjective experience. And as some of you may know, quite often subjective experience is not always subject to scientific study, so often gets overlooked, but this is very important for our work as body-oriented coaches. So let's dive in, shall we? I'm gonna start us off with a poem, and I would love to hear from some of you about how this particular poem lands in your world. So here it is. I'm going to read it and show you the visual for it, so then we have it and we can have a chat about it afterwards. Hiding in this cage of visible matter is the invisible Lifebird. Pay attention to her. She is singing your song. That's a poem by Kabir, an Indian mystic and saint, who wrote this poem called Hiding in This Cage, if anyone's curious and wants to find it later. So this poem I've chosen because I think it really speaks to something very, very central to body-oriented coaching, what it is, why we do it, and how it works. So I'm curious, before I share my interpretations and my various associations with this particular poem, and by the way, this is the only slide in today's talk, but yeah, what comes up for you with that? I'll leave it up on the screen while we have a little chat about it, but feel free to unmute, just jump into the space. I'd love to hear your voices and what comes up for you in relation to this particular poem as you read that. Yeah, Catherine.
Happy to jump in. Something came up for me, maybe because of the use of she, and I identify as a woman, of just having this like inner voice that's there to honor my best interests. So in a world where maybe that isn't always the case, or, you know, others might not always have that, there's something about tuning into the song that's about me being the best, biggest version of myself in the world.
Beautiful, Catherine. Tuning into that inner voice that's always there. It's got your best interests. Fantastic. Yeah. And the kind of, did you say the best version of you in the world, Catherine?
Yeah, sorry, I've got dogs here and they're just barking, so I'm not sure if that is coming
No,
through.
no, heard you loud and clear. Just wanted to clarify.
Yeah,
So
but
that's great.
that is what I said.
Lovely, lovely. Yeah. So something as well about your kind of authentic and expression of your, you could say, my words, not yours, Catherine, but like potential, your potential, or your authentic expression of who you truly are, fully expressed, fully Catherine. Yeah. Cool, lovely. Feel free to chime in with any adjustments on that language there if you need to, Catherine, in the chat. Otherwise, we'll come on to yeah. Did I see Claire? Did I see you on fully Catherine? Great. Did I see you on mute there? No, maybe not. Anyone else want to jump in then? How does this poem kind of land in your world, as I say? Elizabeth, I see you unmuted. So if that was
Hi, Nathan. Hi, everybody. That was lovely, Catherine. And it's a beautiful poem, isn't it? And I agree with what Catherine says. I also think that we are invisible sometimes because we don't have the courage always to go ahead with our beliefs. And so I kind of interpret that the invisibility is that we want to sing, but we're not quite sure how to sing as well. And so we hide, and yes, I think it is about wanting to be true to our values and our beliefs. But it gets hidden amongst other things as well
I love that.
daily life.
Really beautiful. I actually want to see if I can quickly find found it. There is a book that speaks directly to what you've just been speaking about, called The Little Bird Who Found Herself by Ed McMahon. Can you see that?
Yes, little bird who
Found Herself by Ed McMahon. Now, Ed McMahon and Pete Campbell created something called biospirituality, working with Eugene Genlin's focusing approach, which we're actually going to be talking about a lot. So this is what you've just shared is very, very in line with this particular book, and I think you'll like it. It's a children's book,
lovely, thank you.
but it's really wonderful, and it speaks directly to what we're about to be talking about today as well. So it's very. So far, everything that you've shared, Catherine and Elizabeth, feels very, very apt. Anyone else want to share before I kind of unpack this in relation to body into coaching?
May I, please?
Yeah, absolutely, Sarah.
Bit more woken up now, Nathan. But I've got envy of your boiled egg, messy or otherwise.
Yeah, right.
This is really, oh my gosh, it's so resonant for me in my journey and so many of the people in my world, in that idea of, I didn't even realize that bird was invisible to me for most of my life. And I was, that idea of my cage of visible matter was being directed by something other than me. And actually that discovery of my Lifebird, and I love that she's a she in this poem as well. But that it's like one of those revelatory aha moments, and then allowing myself to tune in and hear my song has shifted my world in all sorts of ways. And that, again, things that people will say to me, I've never looked inside. I've never, it's that autopilot that the world piles in. You know, go to university, get a career, climb the ladder. I was saying before, even if it's not your ladder and it's against the wrong wall. But yeah, my Lifebird knew. I just didn't know that she was even there, which makes me feel quite melancholy for those years, but very glad and grateful that I'm here now.
We're glad and grateful that you're here now too, Sarah, and sharing this and having had that discovery, you know, having made the having become acquainted with your with your Lifebird. And what beautiful articulation of, you know, all of you have set us up perfectly for today's session. You know, this is exactly what we're talking about. And in fact, can I just see, by show of hands, who's already a body oriented coach? Who's a Somatic here at the Somatic School? Claire, you beginning your training soon? Yeah. Okay, great. Cool. So okay, only one of you. Wow, fantastic. So so if you have the desire to both become acquainted with your invisible Lifebird, or the Lifebird that sings your song, and as Sarah said, get your exact words now, but it was beautiful. Something about, paraphrasing, something about inner guidance in a sense, right? And kind of knows what, who knows, using Catherine's language, something that knows what's best for you, you know, and kind of has that and if you're interested in connecting with that yourself and helping with others become acquainted with their Lifebird and have that become a source of inner guidance, a wisdom within that's accessible at all times, then you might be a body-oriented coach or be ready to train as a body-oriented coach, so to speak. This might be a path for you. Let's talk more, and you'll be the judge of that. You will find out if this feels like a sort of fit for you. But what we're speaking to here is at the heart of this approach, and so let's unpack this a bit further. Just before I pull the poem down, I noticed that a few of you are appreciating that the her and she pronoun, the fact that this is that the Lifebird here is described in the feminine, and it's not surprising to me in many ways that this phenomenon that you're all talking about goes by many different names. We can see this phenomenon described in philosophy, theology and spirituality, and the sciences and psychology, in fact. But the point I'm making here is that when it's described in theology and spiritual traditions, it's often associated with a feminine principle or a feminine quality. So in Judaism, they talk about the Shekhinah, which is the feminine presence of the divine. In Christian tradition or Christian mysticism, they talk about in Christian tradition they talk about the Holy Spirit, but even more so in the kind of mystic space there, they talk about Sophia, which is a sort of like a feminine guidance that's here on earth, just like the Shekhinah. It's the same principle. It's the feminine presence of the divine that's here on earth, incarnate. And so that is, and then of course many other traditions, like for example in Taoism, the Tao is often spoken about in the feminine, and the Tao, you know, following the Tao. The Tao is a sort of a organizing, guiding principle in all of that's present in the world, and that we can align ourselves with, and therefore kind of be one with the flow of life, as opposed to finding ourselves pushing against it or, you know, fighting, but actually finding ourselves in flow more often than not. Okay, so something interesting there about how it's, you know, it has a resonance for you, and it's also an archetypal resonance, you could say, this particular feminine quality. And in a world that's almost that's dominated by masculine values and principles, such as linear methods of thinking and acting, such as things like direction and control, perhaps, versus you know, more perhaps receptivity You could say some feminine qualities as described, not gendered, but like in the yin and yang, in the ancient Chinese traditions, you've got the yin and yang. And so the yin is the feminine counterpart to the masculine yang, which we all have within us, whether male, female, or other. Okay, we all have those within us. And the yin, qualities of the yin are receptive, non-linear, sort of perhaps nourishing or life-giving, you know. So these are certain things that I think there are qualities that we are seeing that maybe in society we're a little out of balance, because remember, the balance and harmony is established by the balance of both yin and yang. You have both, and society has kind of skewed a little bit towards the yang. And so maybe some of these principles are kind of making a bit of a comeback. I think you probably may be able to resonate with that, but we also can see this here. So this is an approach that seeks to balance those qualities, you could say then, and bring in more wholly these kind of more, you could say, the more feminine. And when I say feminine, I don't mean of woman. You know, I'm talking in, you know, this is a kind of true for what, regardless of your gender. Okay, cool. So that's just a little note on that. Like I said, the phenomenon also goes by many, many other names. So in psychology, Carl Rogers described the self-actualizing tendency. The self-actualizing tendency, this inherent impulse towards growth, healing, and wholeness that we see present in all life. It's like it's like the opposite of entropy. And Carl Rogers argued that it's equal to, if not a greater, you know, it needed more. At the time that Carl Rogers was creating person-centered client work, the vast majority of therapies at the time were largely focused on entropy, on pathology and disease, disorder, and dysfunction. And Carl Rogers was amongst the other members of the human potential movement, were saying that, but there's another kind of energy there's another force in life which is worth giving attention to and seeing actually how we can support that. What if we give emphasis to that within the therapeutic context? How can we support, therefore, the self-actualizing tendency? And this is basically the desire to live and thrive and flourish, you know, and not just a desire consciously, but the actual human organism is working in every moment in the direction of growth, life, evolution, until you know, and we naturally have entropy. In other words, we naturally have you know, slowly cells do die off and decay and things like that, of course, naturally, but for the vast majority of their life, the movement that's most kind of helpful for us, I think, is to give attention to that life-giving, self-actualizing tendency. He called it also, self-actualizing tendency was almost like the individual example of what he called the formative tendency of the universe. So basically, this note lines up with complexity science, and this idea that the whole of all of life is in this state of continuous evolution and growth and expansion. And so there's actually science that supports these psychological principles very well. We can also see it. There's autopoiesis, which is another thing in biology that speaks to the same idea. And where else do we hear this spoken about? So that's psychology. We've got some of the sciences there, and we've got theology and spirituality. And then in the philosophies, you have people that like Alfred North Whitehead that speak about who created process, who's one of the kind of main proponents of process thinking, process philosophy, which is the notion that nothing in life is static or fixed, but everything is in a process of becoming. Everything is in a process. All of life is in everything, and it all depends on your time frame. You might say, well, my mug's not in a process of becoming. It's look, it's a metal mug. It's static. It's fit. Well, it all depends on your time frame. See, like 2 billion years from now, this mug will look very, very different to the way it looks right now. So nothing in from a process philosophy perspective, nothing is static or fixed. Okay, cool. So let's ground this a little bit here, because that's what we do at the Somatic School. We like to take all of these different, a broad swath of these different ways that we can understand life, ourselves, each other, the world around us, and then ground it. And how do we ground that? How do we ground these things? We do that by bringing it all into the body. We bring it all into experience. So it's not just theoretical, but it's felt. It's all theoretical until it's felt. There's a lovely the First Nations or indigenous people, and I forget the particular where in the world they're from, but they say it's a rumor until it's in the bones, which I think speaks to this notion. Yeah, it's nice. So that's what we're going to do. We're just going to take some time to kind of ground this idea in our bodily experience, because this is where we come to know. And I think this is important in our age now, especially in the age of AI, where we can make a distinction between knowledge and knowing. There's a lot of knowledge out there, and we're actually inundated these days with knowledge. But what does it mean to really access our knowing? And knowing doesn't necessarily mean that we're talking about the idea of some universal truth, but just that we have some knowing that can inform our decision making and can be a guiding, that can offer guidance in our lives, that can help with us as we interact with others and as we navigate our lives, So let's talk about bodily ways of knowing. Bodily ways of knowing, somatic ways of knowing, other ways of knowing beyond our intellect, intelligence beyond the intellect. For the science on our intelligence beyond the intellect, which I go into in great detail, check out the keynote for sure. And in the meantime, let's look at one particular avenue for this, because I didn't talk about this at the keynote, and this is important for understanding body image coaching. Who has heard of the felt sense? Anyone heard of the expression the felt sense? Fabulous. Oh, I love it, having a group this is fantastic. Wow, great. That's so exciting, I have to say. Okay, so the felt sense is a terminology that does kind of bandy around the embodiment and somatics field, but fewer people are aware that it was coined by an individual called Eugene Genlin. Right. So Eugene Genlin, who is Eugene Genlin? Eugene Genlin, anyway, do you know, I mentioned Carl Rogers earlier. Does anyone know who Carl Rogers is? Oh, sure. Okay, cool. Great. Yes, Elizabeth. Hello. I see you there. So Carl Rogers is probably, he's arguably, he was certainly one of the pioneers and the kind of the founding member, like founders of the human potential movement around the 60s, 70s, and in the 60s. And he's a humanistic practitioner and one of the kind of like original humanistic psychologists. Carl Rogers created something called client-centered counseling or person-centered therapy, or goes by two different names, client-centered or person-centered. It's the same thing. And he's arguably one of the most influential individuals on the coaching approach that we understand today. So the coaching approach is one in which we work in a way that is primarily non-directive, client-led, and works in service of the client's desired outcome, where the coach themselves position themselves as not expert, but rather to help the client come to their own solutions, their own conclusions, and do their own sense making. Okay, so we facilitate a process of inquiry that at its core is essentially empowering. We are not seeking to have any dependency on the practitioner, on the coach themselves, but rather empower the client to recognize that they are creative, resourceful, and whole. And that's what the coaching approach is. And this is very, very aligned with Carl Rogers' original kind of thinking around humanistic psychology. And coaching has also been influenced by has other influences, but this is primarily what his influence on the coaching approach can be. You know, you can see the echoes of Carl Rogers' thinking in there and others. But Eugene Genlin was a colleague of Carl Rogers, and together they did some research, fascinating research, where they wanted to be able to see if they could find something within therapy sessions that would help them predict successful therapeutic outcomes. Because if they could do that, if there was something that they could, by listening to thousands of recordings of therapy sessions, if there was something within those recordings that they could hear or identify as a predictor of successful therapeutic outcomes, well, then great, we double down on that. We give that, we somehow find a way to kind of backwards engineer that or work that into our therapy sessions, and therefore we are going to have more successful therapy. What they discovered was they did find something. They found a predictor, but it wasn't something the therapist was doing. It wasn't something it's something the clients did. So, which is wonderfully coaching, because it's all, it's all the client who does the work at the end of the day. And it wasn't the therapist, it was the client. And what were the clients doing? Well, somewhere within the therapy conversation, they'd notice that the clients who demonstrated this, what I'm about to describe, that would predict successful therapeutic outcomes from the very first session. And what were the clients doing? So somewhere within the conversation, they do something that Eugene Genlin and Carl Rogers described as groping for words. Groping for words. Okay, what does this mean? I'll give you a little example. Let's say you've got the client Sandy, and Sandy's talking about something that's happened for her recently, and she says, I left his house and I was so angry. No, wait, that wasn't it actually. No, I wasn't angry. I was disappointed. Yeah, I was disappointed. That's it. I was so disappointed. See the little journey I went on there? The client says, angry, no, angry. That doesn't quite fit. That's not quite it. Wait a minute. Searching for something. The word kind of comes, disappointed. And then saying disappointed. Yeah, that's it. That fits. That's right. That's disappointed. That's what I mean. I'm saying what I mean. Well, Eugene Genlin and Carl Rogers discovered that this is something that first of all, they later created something called the experiencing scale to speak to this, but Eugene Genlin specifically took this a lot further. Eugene Genlin said, he created a whole philosophy out of this, the origin of meaning. He's basically saying, where do we go? Where do we go to find the right word? If angry is not quite it, where do we go to find the word that fits? And what he described was he coined something that we all have. He didn't invent it. He just gave language to it. He called it the felt sense. He said we go to our bodies. There's a feeling inside, a murky feeling that when I say angry, it's sort of like dissonant. It's a bit, that's not it. It's kind of, not exactly, it all depends. Who knows what it's going to feel like? But all I know is it doesn't feel right. But then where do you go to find the right word? Well, actually, whether consciously or not, because most of the clients won't be doing this consciously, whether consciously or not, they would have been sensing and kind of tuning in and waiting for the invisible Lifebird, perhaps, to basically say, it's disappointed, you're disappointed. Essentially. There's something inside that knows. Something in us knows something about what we're trying to express, knows us very, very deeply, has all the information from our entire life's experience, and maybe not just our lifetime. Epigenetically, we know now that there's actually something that Thomas Verney describes as cellular memory. The idea that memory itself might not even be exclusively in the brain, in the neurons in the brain, that memory is actually stored in the cells of our body, for example. A felt sense is not just the idea of the gut brain, for example, though there is a lot of neural circuitry in our gut. The felt sense can even be a whole body experience, but it is a way of knowing. It's an intelligence that we can access that's not cerebral. It's not, let's put it a different way. It's not skull bound. There's a way of knowing that we can access, which is via a felt sense. Now, what a felt sense is essentially described then, therefore, as a meaningful bodily felt experience. It's inherently meaningful. In other words, we can describe the detail of it, the texture of it, the feel of it. Is it warm, cool, compressed, tight, expansive, open, soft, hard, spiky, fizzing? These are all these evocative, wonderfully evocative language. We talk a lot about evocative language on our training here. And but this language we can use to describe our felt sense, but with it comes meaning. It's meaningful. It's not just a scratchy feeling inside. That scratchy feeling has a story to tell. It's loaded with meaning, more than we could ever say in words. In fact, it's all an approximation. We can only kind of speak broadly to it. We try our best to describe it. So that there is the felt sense. Would you like to have a little experience of the felt sense for yourself? Let's try it, shall we? Yeah, great. Let's do it. Let's have an experience of the felt sense. Okay, cool. I'm going to guide you through a little experiment here, just to give you a taste of a felt sense. This is not a coaching. This is not what we would do in coaching. This is just to give you an experience of a felt sense. So take time to find yourself in a comfortable position. You might find that closing eyes helps you to reduce the stimulus outside and attend to what's happening inside, but you really don't have to close eyes to do this at all. So do whatever feels comfortable for you. And remember, everything that follows is an invitation. If at any point you want to stop, you can. And if you want to do something else that would feel better for you in some way, do it. Follow that impulse. Okay, cool. So if you're ready, I'd like to invite you to think of two people, maybe someone that you have loving feelings towards. That's the first person. Then there may be somebody else that you would rather not bump into. Type of person you'd rather avoid, maybe. If you don't have anyone like that in your life, then good for you. That's great. And maybe you can think of someone with whom maybe the connection is not quite as it was or could be, and there's some tension there. Maybe you'll say, I'm fine to see them. But yeah, someone you'd rather not bump into, somebody that you have loving feelings towards. Bring those two people to mind. Now I'd like to invite you, and for this, feel free to, remember this is recorded. You need not take any notes here necessarily, right? So you can be with your experience, but feel free to take notes if you need to. But I'd like to invite you to bring awareness to your body. You can kind of let go of those two people just for the moment, and just bring awareness to the body in any way that feels right for you right now. And from here, I'd like to invite one of those individuals back into your awareness. So perhaps inviting the first individual to come into your awareness now. Notice the whole body sense that comes from your experience of being with that person, holding that person in mind, in your body mind. Notice what you might describe as this maybe inner aura, perhaps, or this felt sense, as you let your attention dwell there on the first person. Really take some time to see if you can find a description, just quietly, silently to yourself, to name your whole sense of that person and everything about them. That's that whole sense of that person, that particular individual, and your relationship with them. See if you can describe your sense of them. And when I say describe, I mean really the sense. What are you actually sensing? Describing that. You're sensing in the body. Okay, now you can let that person go, and I'd like to invite you to bring the second person into your awareness now. The second person now, taking time to notice your sense of this new person. Is it different to the first? If so, how? See if you can find some words to describe your whole sense of this second person. And notice that this isn't describing what you think about the person. It's naming the whole sense that you experience in relation to them. And from this place, you might see what it's like to play with this here. You might slide back and forth between them. Are there any distinctions that you notice between your felt sense of these two people as you do this? And then slowly in your own time and in your own way, I'd love to invite you to gradually bring awareness back to the space. You might take time to a moment here just to close this process inwardly in whatever way feels right for you to feel complete with that experience. And whenever you make your way back here, and I encourage you to do that in your own time, only when you're ready, but when you do come back to the group, I'd love to open this up here and just hear from some of you. What did you notice? What was your experience? Taking your time. Great, Claire. Whenever you're ready.
I don't want to speak too soon and disturb people who are still coming down.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing, isn't it? To see people just being with their felt sense. Yeah. Let's go for it.
Yeah, so this is, I thank you again. I have known about this for a long time and I didn't have the language for it. So thank you for, I learn so much every time I tune into one of your talks. For me, what was really notable, I chose a dear friend and thankfully an ex-colleague as my two individuals. And what was really notable, quite apart from any words that I found to represent, although I again I liked the way you expressed that, the feeling was, the first was a very expansive, open, welcoming. Oh, got all the emotions going now. There was a sense of safety, and because of that, there was an openness and a welcoming. The other one, not so much. The other one, I could actually feel myself closing in, withdrawing. There was that internal armor went up, that internal protection. Just even immediately. That was probably the most interesting reflection for me from that one.
Yeah, fantastic. Great observations. Amazing embodied self-awareness there, Claire. And I love something that you said at the beginning, which is that this is something you've known about for a long time and didn't have language for. Right. This is nothing new. This is really important, that this is as natural as it gets. This is a human capability of ours, to tend to this felt sense, and can be very validating to give language to it, to recognize it as a source of intelligence, a genuine, bona fide intelligence beyond the intellect, especially in a society that often diminishes the importance and the value of our felt sensing abilities. So, Claire, well done for connecting with your felt sense. I'm delighted that you've got kind of language to speak to this now, and a whole world will open up for you from this place as well to understand more about the felt sense. And yeah, great awareness of the contrast between those two felt senses. Great, lovely. You both pretty much raised your hand at the exact same time. Kaylee, I'll come to you, and then I'll come to you, Catherine, straight after.
Thanks. I couldn't find the actual raised hand button, so
Fine.
I chose two family members, and it was funny actually hearing the language that Claire used because it was similar for me. I just possibly came up with slightly different words for it. So with the one person that, you know, feel positively towards, I came up with kind of calm and steady, and there was this like level of openness, kind of similar to what you said, Claire. With the sort of opposing person, it was more guarded, was the word that I found for that. And then the feeling kind of then in comparison with the two, it was very much like, well, you know, I love you both, but like walls down for you, walls up for you.
Yeah. Yeah, great, fantastic. And what's really lovely, Kaylee, there is that you're beginning to speak in metaphor. And metaphor is fascinating because metaphor straddles both conceptual self-awareness and embodied self-awareness. You know, there's this interesting, it's a really beautiful bridge into somatic experience to talk about walls up, walls down. Much of the metaphor we use is actually inherently embodied. It actually reveals just how embodied our minds are. When we say, standing up on my own 2 feet, I've got my back up against the wall, you know, it's a weight on my shoulders. We talk in this way all the time. We can't, you know, that is just a reflection of our embodied existence. And so that's wonderful. So great to hear. And also, if we were doing body into coaching right now, that metaphor would be offering such a rich territory to be exploring this in more detail as you keep tending to that felt sense and seeing how else that evolves and what that offers you. So thank you very much for sharing, Kelly. Yeah, something great about this is that, you know, what we're experiencing here is kind of just simple. You're already seeing so much from just tending to the felt sense of just a relationship. Now imagine that a client was bringing a specific topic in a particular place that they're stuck on, and then their felt sense around that. What we've just experienced is just the starting point. As soon as you've got a felt sense, then you start to work with it. In Embody Into Coaching, we have many, many different ways to work with it, whether that's in felt sense, felt sensing, focusing, object feedback, environmental feedback with our constellation skill set, all these different ways of working with the felt sense, a whole variety of ways. But the reason I'm sharing this with you today on this particular session is because it's so central. Because, as we say, it's one of the most profound other ways of knowing that we have beyond, you know, like I say, our intellect, our propositional reasoning, our rational mind, our logic, mental meaning making, that sort of thing, which has quite a cognitive load. I don't know if you've noticed, but trying to figure things out up here, so to speak, exclusively, it's hard work. The brain uses a lot of energy. It's the most calorie consumptive organ in the body. And it really helps to begin to draw on these other ways of knowing. We at the Somatic School use our constellations, this constellation skill that we train here, structural constellations. We use that for strategic decision making. And I tell you, it has a much lighter cognitive load. We feel enlivened, energized, instead of like, oof, that was hard work, but we got there. You know, it doesn't have to feel like that. So cool. Okay, Catherine, coming to you.
I forgot to put my hand up. Just on that point, like, I do most of my big decision making walking for that exact reason. It just feels so much easier. Yeah, so in the exercise, I thought of my partner for the person I love, and I thought of home and how that kind of manifested is I tilted my head to the side and I had my hands kind of together and they came apart and my arms came down, and I started rubbing my feet together, which is kind of what I do before, like when I feel sleepy. So it's kind of like I was trying to find words for this, and I was like, this is what it feels like to feel at home. And then I thought about the neighbour who we've got a few problems with, and I felt the contraction so powerfully. It's like I almost couldn't feel my hands and my feet, and my jaw just like clenched together, almost as if I wouldn't be able to speak. And my other thing I just was reflecting on is like I've done the Metta Bhavana in like a Buddhist context, and obviously it's kind of a similar idea of sitting with different people you have different relationships with. But I've never felt the contrast so intensely, and I was just thinking like, why is that? And usually you do it after quite a lot of personal relaxation yourself. So actually it was quite good to feel more of a contrast, and that brought actually more awareness as a practice for me in terms of like how my body reacts to different types of people.
Absolutely beautiful, Catherine. Yeah, there's a time and a place for both, right? You know, there's
Yeah.
a time for meditation, and then there's a time for what we're doing here, which is you could describe as embodied sense making. And so if you're trying to learn about yourself, or you want to learn about something about this relationship, and you want to do that with understanding, you know, what does the body know about that? Believe me, as you've all discovered here, I mean, you don't need to take my word for it. You've just discovered the body knows a lot. Sometimes the body knows much that we are not yet consciously aware of. And that's really the point of body-oriented coaching. It's to bring into conscious awareness that which is outside of our conscious awareness for our clients, because then once we do that, they know more, they have more clarity, they understand their way forward, they understand exactly the kind of, it's in quite extraordinary how precise that almost the solutions that come from the body. Talk about this notion of wisdom within. You know, we live in a world now where we often go to YouTube or ChatGPT to understand what we need to do or how, but there's so much, you know, that we can learn by tuning in this way. So Catherine, you just to put that into practice. And like you said, yeah, like, you know, it all depends on what the intention is or what you're trying to do. But this is it's a wonderful noticing of like the difference between a meditation, which this is not, because whilst it can sound meditative to say, tend to the body, and we might be slowing down, we're actually not aiming to bring somebody into a meditative state. We want a certain kind of alertness, a curiosity, you know, attentive to what's happening there. So wonderful. And yeah, beautiful reflections. Also, I imagine you would be very fun to coach, Catherine, because it sounds like your body is speaking in many ways, with the feet rubbing together, the hands coming apart, and all that awareness of that would be, yeah, you'd probably benefit greatly if you've not done some kind of somatic. You probably benefit greatly from it, and I imagine it would probably lend itself very well to you being a very competent somatic or body-oriented coach, because that connection with the body and that sensitivity and attunement to your own body would probably lend itself very well to that. I really mean that. Yeah, okay, cool. I see two hands, Catherine and Elizabeth. We'll start, sorry, Catherine, Kaylee, got confused, Kaylee and Elizabeth. We'll start with, I think, do you know which of you raised your hand first? I'll just ask you to be courteous. And was it Kaylee? Okay, cool. And then we'll come back to you, Elizabeth. Yeah, great. Thanks, Kaylee.
So I just had a question, hopefully not something that I've sort of missed off at the beginning because I wasn't quite on for the very start. But when we're talking about felt sense, are we talking about the same thing that may otherwise be described as intuition? Or is there a difference?
Yeah, it was just fascinating, Kaylee. And so just for the sake of time, I'll give you like a pithy little response, and then obviously feel free to continue your exploration into this later on. I'm sure now that you have the language for the felt sense, you could go on a whole kind of rabbit hole, getting more distinction between it. Here's how I understand it. So I would say yes, very, very much so. I think what the vast majority of people mean when they say intuition has to do with exactly this. And I think intuition can include more than the felt sense. So some people understand intuition as sort of almost like maybe having some people might experience their intuition as visions or kind of sense of download from the muses or some spirits or however they can see, depending on their worldview. Some people may have I think there's probably just it sort of expands beyond that kind of meaningful bodily experience for some people. Intuition may go beyond that. So I think it definitely comprises it. For many people, like myself, for example, when I used to say intuition, I meant the felt. It was the same. You know, for me personally, it was the same. The gut feeling of something being off. Can't quite explain why. I just feel it, you know? So yeah, nice exploration. Curious to, if you feel like you want to share with us where you at a later point, if you want to come back to us and let us know what you discover in your exploration of that, please feel free. I would love to hear from you again. So yeah,
Thank you. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. I'd agree with, I think, what you were saying about the intuition can encompass different things other than like what we've just done.
yes. Yes, it might do for some. And remember, we're all, we are all unified by the fact we all have bodies, and yeah, all of our bodies are completely unique. And so how each of us experiences intuition, for example, will be personal for us. And that's why a coaching approach that doesn't actually say, here's a practice, do this, do that, try this, is so powerful. A body-oriented approach says, what does your body know? How does your body want to move? What happens when you do attend to this? What do you notice for yourself? Because everybody knows, and everybody is unique in that regard. And similar, because we all have bodies. So it's a wonderfully leveling thing as well, regardless of age, ethnicity, gender, etc. We all have a body. Pretty cool. Need a bit more of that unifying in today's world. We do something that we share in common. Yeah, in a very polarized world. Is that Elizabeth coming to you?
Yes, I mean, I visualized two friends, one who's a very good friend and another who was a very good friend but is no longer a friend. So when I thought of the first friend and I sat and visualized, I felt this warm glow in my stomach, and my body relaxed, and I felt trust and joy, and wanted to open my arms and have a warm embrace and that warmth. And then when I thought of my ex-friend, I could feel again with my stomach on a slight tension coming down from my shoulders, and my mind going, okay, you've seen her, haven't seen her for a long time, be wary, distrust. So I had trust for one, distrust for the other, and guard. But I did find that with my body, in sort of how my body spoke in feelings, and it came from my stomach, and how, one part was arms open and another part was arms down, and feeling that ooh, so it is
Amazing.
it's fascinating, isn't it?
Fascinating. Fantastic, Elizabeth. Absolutely. Yeah. The body is speaking constantly. Are we listening? Yeah. And also, one of the things we say at the Somatic School is that when we're working, especially with clients, silence is not the absence of dialogue. As you've just experienced, there's a whole conversation that is happening. We can be a part of the conversation or not. And to be a part of the conversation is simply turning towards and just checking in. I love this. What did Catherine said, love the idea of this work broadly asking the question, what does your body know? Exactly. And to find out, we simply ask. What an amazing concept. Ask the body. It seems bizarre, but there is, it really does work like that. And Tracy there, I felt a shift between leaning to a preferred person and withdrawal in my body, moving back from being close to the other person. I also lost my smile and felt discomfort. Yeah, great noticing as well. So I'm just mindful of the time, guys. We could talk about this for hours, but it's been so lovely exploring this with you. Now, I want to just mention that the felt sense is just one aspect of body-oriented coaching, but it is so central, because from here, this is the starting point. Now, what happens next is how we work. Now, as body-oriented coaching, it's a process-oriented way of working. It's a process. And body-oriented coaching is within the process way of working, which means that we work like a steward or a midwife to an intelligent unfolding process. We're not the expert. The client is the expert, but their body is the expert. Their body knows, and we are going to work to steward that knowing along. And the way that we do that is the body-oriented coaching skill set. And this is actually supported by science. If you look at any biological, complex living systems, biological organisms, there's self-organizing. If we, for example, we cut ourselves, we don't have to tell platelets to gather around the wound. We don't have to, it happens. Yeah, there are so many functions, things that are happening in our body right now, self-organizing, from the late night sleep we had last night, or this and that. There's lots that's happening right now, all working to self-organize. The psychology is no different. See, here at the Somatic School, we believe that psychology and our psychology and our bodies are intrinsically, they're inseparable. Yeah, we are neuropsychobiological beings. That's why we use the term the body mind. And so our thoughts, our moods, our experience, we can work to help with self-organization in our clients, and that's really the crux of it. So really making wisdom, if you're interested in supporting others to access the wisdom within, to become attuned to and learn to be in dialogue with a source of inner guidance, and to do that for yourselves, then you may well want to be a body image coach. So I'll quickly flash this up now, because first of all, the next session that's coming up today is Somatic coaching, live coaching demo. So you get to see this in action in just half an hour's time. Recommend it. If you can make it, good stuff. And then there's all, gosh, so many sessions that you can come to, and then we've got a whole bevy of things to attend today. The final thing just to say is that if you are interested in learning more about becoming a certified body image coach, then I encourage you to scan that QR code on the left there. You can come along to one of our free introduction to body image coaching events. Great place to get your question answered and learn more about the course, the training itself in great detail. There are also introduction to body image coaching sessions on the summit today. So if you can make it to one of those, equally, that could be another option for you. And then, of course, if you've attended a introduction to body image coaching and you're here because you're thinking, I'm really keen and I just wanted to learn a bit more before I kind of spoke to a course consultant. But if you feel ready now, then you've got that other QR code on the right there. And if you want to book a call with one of our course consultants, you can simply scan that and you'll find a scheduling page where you can do exactly that. One of the reasons you might like to do that within the next 14 days after the summit is because we actually have a special enrollment offer, as you can see on the right there. Our 3-day body-oriented group coaching certificate, group coaching if you'd like to work with groups, and 4 one-to-one supervision sessions, totaling the total value of these two things is £1,250. If you enroll within the next 14 days, it's included in your enrollment on our accredited diploma in body image coaching. So something to think about. Nothing, you don't need to make a decision now, of course. First step would be either attending a free introduction to body image coaching or having a conversation with a course consultant. No one enrolls until they've had a chat with one of our course consultants, because it needs to be right for you. We need to know that it is indeed the right fit. And so we can only establish that by being in conversation. And then, of course, and something in you knows what's right for you. And so listen to that invisible Lifebird, because after all, she is singing your song. Thank you very much. It's been lovely to see you all today. I'd love to, if you'd like to share in the chat, maybe, what you're leaving here with, I'd love to read those afterwards, but I'm mindful of the time. I want to let you go and take a break now, half an hour until the next session. So thank you for joining us today, and it's been a real pleasure. Take care. Have a lovely rest of your summit. Bye now.